This week we're building our last set of chain plates that will go on the boat. If you've watched in the past, we've built lots of cool composite chain plates on board. These are going to be totally different than the ones we've built in the past. They're for the check stays, and so they're extremely important for keeping the mast upright. If we get them wrong, the mast could potentially collapse. To get them right, we had Evan, the engineer, give us a hand in designing these, and we're actually going to hear from Evan later in the show. These are totally hidden inside the boat, and so we'll build them deep inside the cave and never see them again pretty much. So I think they're very, very cool. I'm excited to show you how they went. We got a lot of concerned comments about my hatch drain design. There's a lot of work to get to this week, so I'm going to address your concerns in next week's episode, I promise. My name is Matt. Follow along as I turn Duracell, the legendary ocean racing sailboat, into a comfortable cruising home. Continuing on with the deck projects, we are now going to replace the check stay chain plates. So these are, right now there's 2 chain plates on each side. For the check stays, I'll get into what check stays are a little bit later, but it's another place where water can get into the boat, and so we're going to replace them with composite chain plates, make them maintenance free and leak free. Check stays are essentially running back stays that are attached lower on the mast. What my check stays will do is oppose the cutter stay and stabilize the mast by keeping it from pumping and, worse, inverting, which could lead to a collapse, especially with a reef in the main, which will be often. So long story short, there can be a lot of load on these check stays, so the chain plate where they attach at the deck needs to be very stout. The chain plate itself is a very cool design that Evan and I came up with. Instead of a protruding part above the deck, the entire structure will be built below deck. The foam core will be replaced with solid glass so the core can't be crushed. The inside skin will be reinforced with a whole bunch of fiberglass, and then 2 knees will be glued in and glassed in with a bunch more fiberglass. Then a solid fiberglass rod will be glued into the corner or shear, and on either side of the rod a hole will be drilled, one through the deck and one through the hole. Now it's essentially done. A large diameter dynamo loop will be spliced through the 2 holes and a block is attached to the loop. A plate will be glued in between the knees so water can flow from the deck to the hole and out. No leaks. So before I go any further, I have to take out the chain plates and everything that held them into the boat. So there's a lot of cutting and grinding that has to happen first. Early on in this project, Evan, who is a naval architect and engineer, reached out to me and offered his help. And I didn't know it at the time, but since then, Evan has become absolutely indispensable to this project. The boat is so much better for the efforts that he's put into design and engineering, from the chain plates to the bowsprit to coamings, all kinds of stuff, and many more projects in the future. He's been a really fun thought partner. Our philosophies match up really well. And we asked Evan to do a Zoom chat with us so you, the viewers, could get to know him a little better. First, Evan, we were wondering if you would tell us a little bit about your cruising experience and tell us a little bit about how you have done a similar project.
My wife and I cruised on a 30-foot monohull back in our late 20s, early 30s for 4 years. Cruised it up from Central America through the Panama Canal, ended up on the east coast of the United States, where I worked for Bruce Farr Yacht Design for several years. We came back to Canada, and then on our 40-foot boat, which was a catamaran, we did a wholesale modification of what the boat was. That took about 4.5 years of very part-time effort. And after that, we took roughly 8 years to sail around the world on it. We stopped in Australia for a couple of years so I could earn a little bit more money and keep going as you run out of money. That proved to be an amazing journey. All the boat modifications I did, held up great, which was very reassuring. Some of the original parts of the boat that sort of came with the boat, they didn't do so well, but I fixed them along the way, and I now have great experience of being at anchor right in front of Fiji's Hard Rock Cafe, making a new dagger board and running a router for several days and disturbing the customers there. And making another dagger board in a small shipyard in Malaysia because they were both pretty old and they both failed at various times. And rebuilding rudders and doing all kinds of things. When I saw what you were doing, it's like, oh, I can totally feel for this guy. I know exactly where you're at in terms of this is a big project, but I've done something kind of like it, right? So it was like I really empathized with this sort of the magnitude of the project and all the modifications you were doing, and this, so yeah, I thought, yeah, I can help you out with this.
After the old knees were cut out, I had to remove the old and rotten plywood backing plate. It was glassed over, so I cut and pried off the fiberglass and then chipped out the plywood bit by bit. This was kind of a miserable job. So I have to make the core where this chain plate is going to be installed solid. If you remember back to like when I built the chain plates for the shrouds, we replaced the core with solid fiberglass. We laminated in solid fiberglass into that area. I was hoping that I could find some spare pieces of G10, like solid glass scrap that I had lying around, and I had a lot less than I remembered. So I finally realized that for those of you that have been watching for a while will remember that this is the old chain plate that I messed up. And so I think this is a perfect opportunity to use this thing. So what I'm going to do is chop it up into smaller pieces and glue it in where the new chain plates are going to be making the core solid carbon. So it's sad to chop it up, but I don't know. I'm glad that I'm going to find a place to use it. And so what do you do now?
Now I am back in the world of commercial naval architecture, so not yacht design. So the company I work for were probably and I've worked for them mostly since university, with time off to go cruising and time off to work in Australia or for far or in other places. They are the world's biggest tugboat designer and also very significant in the workboat industry. So workboats under 300 feet, 100 meters, sort of the space we're in. About a third of the world's tugs are designed by my company. So it's like lots of steel and aluminum workboats. But I do tend to get the unusual boats that aren't tugboats. They often land on my plate because I find them interesting, and I guess I sometimes do a good job with them.
Right on, like pilot boats,
aluminum
icebreakers.
Dive support boat I did, rescue boats for the Caspian Sea. Yeah, really unique vessels tend to end up on my plate, which is fine. They're fun.
Now that the core was replaced, it was time to reinforce the area with fiberglass. I'm laying a bunch of layers of glass from the hull up onto the underside of the deck. And of course I'm vacuum bagging the glass into the area, so I got all of my materials all cut out in preparation for lamination. Instead of laying up each layer individually in the very tight space I'm working in, I quickly got them wet out in position relative to each other in a nice stack, and used the plastic to carry them into position. we're playing this little interview over top of the work that I'm doing to build these chain plates for the running backs, which you helped engineer. You and I went through many iterations of these things over the past 6 months or so as I was working myself up to building them. Like I said at the beginning, without you coming along and helping me and offering your help, I would never have taken on projects like this because you bring the engineering experience and you're able to make the calculations and everything. But why do you think it's worth the time and effort to even build parts like this when I could have just replaced the old metal parts?
Yeah, that's a great question because, you sort of look at how modern race boats are built and designed. They've gone to a lot more soft attachments, right? That are lighter. They tend to be stronger for what you're doing. So lighter is always good on a boat. There was a famous yacht designer, Gary Mull, who said that, the only boat that benefits, or the only vessel that benefits from extra weight is a steamroller. But so these sort of fittings, like they're smaller bits, right? You could have just bolted a big chunk of metal on there. Besides the lightweight, they're also more reliable in many ways, right? Stainless steel has this nasty habit of failing without warning, and just like the shroud chain plates that are built in carbon, you can build these, and with the Dyneema sort of attachments, change out the Dyneema loop, but they're never going to fail due to corrosion. They're never going to fail to the bolts cracking and you never see it because it's sort of hidden inside the chain plate. It's also a safety thing, right? Like stronger, lighter, less likely to fail, easy to fix with and upgrade with like a new Dyneema strop every little while. From my point of view as an engineer, it's an elegant solution. More work, more labor than just bolting on pieces, but it's also more work like, the stanchions you built, right? You could drill 4 holes and bolt on a conventional stanchion, but the solid fiberglass ones don't leak. They're stronger. They're just a better solution, right? They take a bit more time, but they're better. And so taking that sort of race boat technology, transferring it to what's going to be a cruising boat is really smart.
And it's like the trickle down effect of these hotshot race boats, like coming down into the more consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not quite at the America's Cup level yet, but but it all helps. And what you have is a high performance cruising boat, right? So it's nice not to degrade the performance any more than you have to by adding big heavy metal pieces.
Yeah. Awesome. This might be the last chain plate that I'm going to build and we're going to engineer together, but we have lots more projects Evan and I are working on, and we're looking forward to talking with you more as those projects come up. So thank you again very much.
You're most welcome. Yeah, the keel is an interesting one. So I'm looking forward to getting into the weeds a bit more with that one.
Yep, me too. I made a really simple template for the knees, then cut the knees out of Kusa board and lastly made sure the knees fit. Yesterday we got that big piece of carbon glued in to replace the core, and we laminated over it. We vacuum bagged 8 layers of fiberglass, and it made a big L-shaped part inside the boat, so it's super strong. Now we're going to install these knees, which are going to go 3 inches apart from each other, so they're going to be very close. And after I'm done with this, I'll be laminating these into the boat, and then it'll be pretty much done. So it's actually a pretty quick project, and yeah, this afternoon I'm just using my fast cure epoxy again just to get these in, and maybe we'll get them laminated in as well. Alright, it's very good. I'll let this cure. I gotta cut some glass and then we'll glass these in. The dog bone that will be glued into the corner is a piece of 1-inch diameter G10 rod. I'm using fiberglass rod in place of smaller diameter metal because this will be sealed away and inaccessible without doing boat surgery. So I wanted to use something that won't corrode over time and can be glued in place forever. Finally, I got to drill the holes out through the deck and hull. I just used a 1-inch hole saw and drilled through as close to the rod as I could so the hole is as close to the shear as possible. By now you know I love putting holes in the boat. I have to make sure that the line that's going through the hull and the deck will not chafe from hard corners, sharp corners. And so what I've done is glued in these phenolic tubes into the deck and into the hull, which makes the hull really smooth on the inside of the hull. And then I've taken a router and rounded over the deck and the hull where they exit to make a nice soft corner so that when the line bends over those corners, it doesn't chafe on them. All right, so this is my chain plate installed with the block. So as you can see, all it is it'll be a Dyneema loop that goes through the deck, out the hull, and back to the block. The check stay will come from the mast, down to the block, and then straight to the winch from the block. And so it's a very simple solution, and I'm really happy with how it's turned out. We have a couple new Patreons to thank this week. First, thank you to Xavier, who's from the south of France. He lives out in the woods rebuilding his farm. He's a cinematographer, and him and his wife cruise their first Beneteau out in Brittany, he said, cruising around from island to island. Sounds beautiful. So thank you very much to Xavier. And also to Scott, who sounds like the jack of all trades. He was into fiberglassing, building surfboards, carbon fiber parts for race cars. Now he's a welder, welding on sailboats. And he's got his own wood riverboat that he's rebuilding. So thank you very much to Scott and to Xavier and to everybody that's been supporting the channel. We, of course, could not do this without you. And we'll see you next week.